Hi, YouTube. Hello. The rumors of my demise are grossly overstated. I'm back. And we can start doing some Feedback Friday again. Shh, don't talk about my emails, dude. It's all junk emails anyways. I don't pay attention to that. Or like automated emails. All right, so let's scroll back up and see where we were. So we had finished all this, so the first thing we can look at is Koku. Hi, Eric, I'm new here. Not anymore, you're not. I have joined because I was watching on Feedback Fridays, and this is a great way to learn. Right now I'm struggling with the Total War Bust from Mindworks. I wanted to create a miniature standing on the battlefield, resting after a battle surrounded with fires. I wanted to have a cloudy and smoky sky. Please let me know what you think about the approach, especially the breastplate. And how to approach the hip plates, because you can see there are much worse. I tried to work on this for some time, not able to create the same effects as on the breastplate. Okay. So. Hi, Shamatron. Let's take a look, shall we? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, a fire effect. So this is always tough because you want to create a fire effect, but is anything saying fire to you guys at the moment? Let's do, you guys know, it hasn't been that long. Let's do the thing, right? You guys know I'm all about some values. Thanks, Merkusen. Hello, welcome back. Okay, so what's the issue? What's the issue with the... I mean, the breastplate is pretty good in terms of, like, reflections, but does anything when we go into black and white, do you guys see a second light source? Do you? Yeah? No? Yes? No? What's the problem? The reds in the breastplate, they're too dark, right? Alright, they just disappear. They're the same values as the ground. So, what do we have to do? What do we got to do, huh? We need to add some light, yeah? Maybe not this intense in color, but if we're going to have a second light source, it needs to be lighter than the main light source, right? Or not made lighter than the main, it needs to be lighter than the shadow areas underneath it. Okay, so these like reddish tones you have here, we have to push some light into them. Now, that's to say, I don't think that this piece necessarily needs it, right? You could do this and try and create a second light source and do this sort of OSL effect, but I don't feel like this piece actually needs that. Okay, so what we want to do, let's instead focus on just getting some of these shapes right. All right. So what do we have on the hip? What shape, guys, is this hip plates? The tessés. Huh? Even though they're not correct, they should be more on the front, but it's fantasy, so it's fine. Hip armor. Okay, what shape is this? Yeah? Is it spherical? Sort of. If it was spherical, it would be like really gigantic. There's a bit of there's some curve to it, but I think more accurately this could be described as a cylinder, right? So if we were to extend these out like this, right, it's more a big cylindrical shape than it is spherical, okay? And what do we know about cylinders? Yeah. What do we know about them, huh? The reflection should run this way. Okay? Yes? Cylinders, the reflections run the length of the cylinder. So when you have this ground reflection coming in, though sometimes you can get these sort of like curved shapes across, this isn't super accurate because first and foremost, the reflection should run down the length of the shape. Okay? So what we want to do is first, let's simplify the shape. Okay? So we want to have some kind of light that goes down and across. All right? You might get some of this ground, right? This darker tone here. Let me turn this off. Okay. But the main thing we want to focus on is getting this hip plate to be cylindrical. It should roughly match a bit to the shape of the pauldron, right? And the arm plates here. Okay? So we need to run vertical lines, right? Now there might be some subtle curvature and stuff to it, but we can do that. We can represent that by basically having the light that does reflect on the hip to be a bit brighter in the center, okay? And then let's bring back these darker areas to create separation, and we simplify that shape, and now it should read a bit more metallic, right? So it's really, really important to simplify shapes, okay? Then you can start to add secondary reflections and stuff as you go, but first and foremost, we need to make the main shape work correctly, and then you can introduce other ones. So this one is the chest plate's quite good, right? This one would probably be a little more rounded like this. But then you're overcomplicating like this piece, okay? So you have, these are more like flat planes, maybe slightly cylindrical. This like double horizon reflection that you have going on, it's kind of unnecessary, right? It's too, you're making it too complicated for the shape. Like this would be much more simplified, something maybe like this if we're going based on the light of the other areas. It's very unlikely that the horizon would appear perfectly in the chest or in the abdomen, okay? Because if she's even leaning up slightly, that that horizon is going to be like below, right? So if she's, it would have to be like perfectly straight up and down for you to even see the horizon reflecting in it. If it's tilted even this much, right? So from here to this, there's no way that horizon is reflecting in the stomach, okay? Or if it was tilted down slightly, you wouldn't see the sky. It would basically all be ground, all right? So it would have to be at like a perfect angle to be able to see the actual horizon reflecting in the in that abdominal plate, all right? So that's to say that this one also probably would not have this, right? So we can simplify by getting rid of these. And we've talked about this before. You treat this whole segment here as one shape, and then you create separation between them. Okay, so you don't need to have this doubled reflection in there. So we can reduce the complexity in order to make, so we make it first, make work from a simplified shape, okay? Then you can start to introduce like secondary lights or more complex lights, okay? But the important thing is to, yeah, keep it simple, guys. All right, we don't need to overdo it all the time. All right, so something along these lines. I don't know exactly where that main one would be. Depends on the exact viewing angle and everything, but with it like that, yeah, we create something that, you know, works a little more accurately to the light source. All right, so you can see a bit of the difference here, and hopefully that like makes it clear how that light would work. All right, now the second thing is the hair. The hair is very complex on this model. I'm not going to talk even too much about the face. I think you could push the lights on the face a little more. You could introduce some more, because we're going to talk about lights or faces probably more in this video. You could introduce more to the face, like more nuance, more color variation, things like that. Even push the highlights a little more. But when it comes to the hair, like I don't have a clear picture of what color her hair is, okay? Because if it's supposed to be black, it might not even be painted. It looks like, well, some of it's definitely painted, but other parts of it look maybe still primed. I don't know. If you want to do hair, right, we need to apply, like, if you want to do black hair, for example, like you need less value overall, okay? If her hair's supposed to be, right now it looks gray because there's just too much, the average value is just way too light, okay? So we need to reduce her hair, the average value of her hair down in order to make it read as black hair, or we need to change it to something that's clear that it's not supposed to be black, it's supposed to be something else. All right? So, yeah, like here it looks grayish, here is more black, and then you can come in and create some like actual highlights on top. All right, whatever color that might be. And you start to create some like true. You start to create some true highlights on the hair. And we can push it, but these will be quite small. So you make it shiny, yeah? So it's about like the percentage of how much black to lights you have, to not overdo it in a way where you have so like your lights are too large. Otherwise it doesn't look black anymore. So you can see that like these highlights that I put on top, they're quite small, but they add like sheen to the hair. Okay. So darkening it, right? Darkening it down and then adding actual highlights to it. Okay, cool. Hope that's helpful. Didn't really answer, I mean, I sort of answered the question about the flames, but I don't think it needs it to work as a scene, okay? All right. Next. Don't jump to the bottom, you jerk. I hate that, man. It's so annoying. Discord, stop doing that. All right, who's next? Thomas. Hey, Eric, this one has been shelved for some time. I'm painting for a friend and tried to add a cool secondary light because I think he'd like it and it would fit the cyberpunk vibe. But I think I failed. Probably painted the main light too bright. Okay. Nope, that's not where I want to go. Okay. So, Cyberpunk, huh? So here's a question for you. If we want to dig the magnet? What magnet? Huh? Oh. Do the Artist Opus egg handles have magnets on the bottom for a nice stable storage when not in use? No, they don't have. Well, you can, because you can put two. You could put two of the corks, magnetic corks in it, so you could put one of the magnetic corks in the bottom, which would make it similar. So if you get the regular corks and the magnetic corks, you could put one of the magnetic corks like underneath and make it stick to the table if you want. All right. So let's talk about color, right? Colored lights. Let's look at the saturation, the level of chroma and saturation to this colored light. Okay? Let's look especially on the skin, right? Does this look like a neon light to you? Probably not. We can go so much more saturated. We can push that like crazy more saturated, right? If we want this to be like a neon light, we have to create something like very hard, okay? Like, use the color of the light. Now, that is to say that the other issue is that we don't quite have as much shadow on the Terminator as we need. So I'm gonna just do this like crazy. And sometimes you don't have a super clear Terminator because you have two lights interacting with each other. So like even on the yellow, like this should be quite strong. All right. And then we have to make it work on like these parts, whatever, as you do the like arm and stuff. Okay. So if we're going to introduce a second light here that works with this scene, we might have to create a harder Terminator line in order to create a the kind of mood that you would pick up like this much color in it. Okay, so right now it's like very neutral and white, and then you have this like super strong yellow color. What might help is taking the whole image, right? If we play with the color balance, right? I'm gonna change the midtones. Like, and we shift everything like a little more cold and a little more towards cyan instead of so neutral. Because we want to get something that's like opposite to this magenta sort of color, right? So we can come over here and make it like, often you see this, it's not like a true complementary, it's a offset complementary, right? You normally see this sort of like cyan and magenta color palette when it comes to cyberpunk sort of color schemes, right? So you can now see that her hair, the shadow of her hair, white hair, becomes like cyan blue. Right? Hi, Dave. Hi, Pete. Also, thanks for the prime. Right, and then the yellow like becomes like acts as a the yellow then acts as like the triad between these two. Okay, so by shifting all our neutral grays more towards these cyan colors, we create a triadic color palette, and it'll help to give a little more interest, like a little more punch to the magenta light, because we're playing with like a warm cold sort of deal, right? And then we need to work on really like making sure that these are very bright in certain areas, but bright does not mean like white in this case. Bright means like saturated and intense, okay? So the value of this is going to be lower than the like highlights on her hair. Like this is a higher value, right? But we get a very intense like pink in the shadows, or in the from this secondary light, because if the secondary light here is magenta, right? Unless you're looking, it's so bright that it's overexposed. Like this secondary light is going to basically be pure magenta shining on her. All right. This leads me, same with the previous figure, this leads me into a bit of a point where I know I've talked about this before, but guys, like when you do something like this, it needs to have intention to it, okay? Like you can't just go, okay, I painted the figure. Now I painted the figure by itself without this light, and then I'm just gonna decide to add a second light. Like I think it just needs a bright magenta light. Like, no, it's not, like, it needs to have a purpose. It needs to have like a reasoning behind it earlier. And otherwise it comes off as a bit of an afterthought. Okay, so try and be more considered when you're doing stuff like this. Okay, so I'm gonna put back in. I'm gonna go back. Where is it? Insert a photo. So let's put her back in. Okay, and move her down. So you could see the difference now between these two, right? So this is with the extra light, like the more intense light added, right? So we can put it at the top. Put it at the top. Right, so here's where it was before. The second light, like, almost doesn't even really feel like much like a second light, right? And then here's after of like, okay, now it's playing into this sort of color palette more without being so on the nose that it's this cyberpunky color palette, right? We use these like neutral tones, these more gray blues and things to create this sort of cyberpunky feeling, right? Makes sense? I hope so. You have to have intention. It's important. And then probably what I would do is I would also how do I play with the curves? Like darkening some of the shadows down a little bit, brightening some of these parts up so it's a little more contrasty. Not quite that much, that's a little crazy, but something like that. Dramatic. All right. Recooper. Hi Eric, I took this to SMC and entered historical standard. I wasn't able to get a medal. Any advice for next time, please? I'm happy with the owl, but these arms, so much area to cover and smooth out. Thanks, buddy. This is not historical, according to historical judges. This is fantasy, because historical is for military. I wish I could roll my eyes harder. Yeah. Anyways, so that's to say, I think the owl is pretty nice. Let's look at her. So, I think there's some level of finish, obviously, here. Like, some of the paint looks pretty rough. There's some areas where, like, blends are, like, this just isn't blended enough, you know. Like, you need to round these things over. There's some slop happening here. And in terms of like, I think in terms of your general lights, they're not bad. Check the values, see what I think. So it's not bad. The general light and shadow here is quite good, but I don't see the shape quite as clearly as I think I could. So if I wanted to imagine like the shadows on her, we have a shape like this, and then this would come over here on her face, and you have a bit of light coming in here and here. And that's fine. You would have, but that means everything else on this side, probably your shadow here would be like this small. And then how would the light cast across her neck? Based on also this that comes down her arm, and you have a shadow that goes like this, right? So I think there would probably be some light like that, and then more of this area would be in shadow. I think one of the bigger issues I see is with the neck. You would probably have some sort of cast shadow like this. So that means like all the red area I've drawn, this is basically all shadow area, right? So this should be your general sort of shadow shape. Okay, and that means the other parts are light, right? So right now her neck is like too dark. Right, let's turn this off and let's create another layer that's just like an add, and we'll just do white and black to make it clear. So she should probably have some sort of light. What's going on? That's too much. Oh, dang it. Add. All right. So she should probably have some sort of light that comes across her neck like this, which would mean this area here would be a bit lighter. All right. This would also be quite a bit lighter. This shadow here is too dark. She would then have some more highlighting. All right. This is too dark. This highlight's good. We can push the highlight a little more here. Okay, something like this. And then we're going to softly just increase the light here on the side of her face, because the light is coming in from the side. We'll increase it just a little bit here. All right, so really, like, we want to maintain that, like, the light and shadows are two separate things, okay? So it's really important to keep those values separated so that that shape is more clear. So you should be able to see now, like, the neck, right? The shape of the shadow of the neck, you know? So if we turn the black and white off, could see like the difference here in terms of like creating the shape and volume to her light and shadow side. Okay. Now, if you want to get fancy, we need to probably darken this. This is a good level of shadow. So, whoops, that's the wrong layer. Let's make another layer. All right, so we've got this shadow, and this should probably be a little more smoothed out, so we need some sort of color in between. The shape here should be pretty abrupt, but there is like some smoothness to it, so we can simplify that down a little bit. Then what color is this, right? So now we need to take this, and there should be some light that then gently reflects on her arm from her shirt. Okay? So you have this core shadow, and then that light from her shirt then comes back and creates a little bounce light on the shadow side of her arm in order to one, it's like that's just how it works, right? You can see on my arm, right, when I hold it like this, that there's like the shadows, right? You have the core shadow, and then you have the bounce light of the white desk underneath. That becomes even more intense like when you put something white very close, and in the case of her shirt, it's like right next to it, right? So you could see just how much light like that's going to add when you put something like right next to it. Okay? I can move it around and you can see what it does to the shadows. But that core shadow is still very clear, like where that Terminator line is. All right? Okay, and then yeah, I overdid some of the lights here, so I would need to tone this down a little bit. And you probably want to have some kind of shadow like underneath her nose. You would probably also have a very subtle shadow there if the light's coming in from this direction. This is a Pedro Fernandez sculpt, and he tends to sculpt the faces like a little flat, so they're a bit more open to your own interpretation. So you can add some like subtle volumes and stuff where you think you need. Maybe something along those lines. Anyways, cool. I hope that's helpful. And yeah. The whole historical or not discussion is questionable. Whatever. Try and clean this stuff up a little, This is just going to be more practice of like painting smaller and things, but okay. Cool. Black cat. It's what's his name? Crap. What is his name from Blade Runner? That's the actor. What's the character's name? boy, yeah. All right. Let's look at Roy Batty. So, what do we... skin tones are pretty good, okay? I think there's some pretty nice tonality happening here. Like, in terms of colors, I think you've done a pretty good job. In terms of the light, it's not... Some of the volumes are maybe a little over-defined. Some are probably too soft. So, if we look like here, right? Let me draw with a color that you can see. Right? Like, this is probably slightly too defined. This is probably a little too defined. Knuckles here, probably too defined. So there's an interesting, like, striking balance. And then the neck area is probably too soft, right? Some of this is probably too defined. This is over-defined. We don't have, like, a clear shape. So, one, I don't have, like, a clear light direction where if we look at it from the side, I think it's pretty obvious that we have a light from the front and from the back. So you can see, like, just how defined the jaw is. So we're doing like a nearly straight on light source, which means as things curve around the sides, they're going to get darker. There's some elements here that's like, okay, there's a shadow here, right? Let me make sure I'm drawing on a correct layer, right? We should probably have some sort of shadow like this, right? We've got some occlusion shadows. Maybe this shadow also goes across the arm here. We need to give like some more shape. Huh? We need to give a little bit more shape here. Then you're probably overdoing some of the light, like on the shadows on the face. Like this is too much, right? And we need some more halftones like on the side of the nose. So one, like, let's not overdo this too much. But then if we wanted, we could like ever so softly, right? The light's only going to reflect off the front of the nose, not the like nostrils so much. So we want to try and round some of these shapes over a little bit. You have a highlight here. This is always an issue. People have this like cleft sort of lip thing with the Cupid's bow here. There's light that would hit there. Probably the mouth needs more definition. So now parts need like more definition. So we need some darker shadows in order to create some of the definition we need. Okay. So in this case, what I would consider is like in raising the light source. So instead of like straight on, you can raise the light source a little bit so you at least get like some shadows like underneath parts, okay? Hi, Miguel. Alright, so what I mean here is like we can selectively lift the light source so we're able to create a bit of shadow areas and give some definition to the face where we need in order to create some light, right? Or create some interesting shapes to give some shape to the face. Otherwise, we end up with something that's like it's too flat. So even just like lowering the light or raising the angle of the light slightly in order to create some form here. Right, that'll play into some of these shapes that you have on the bottom of the arm. Right, then you can add a little bit of shadow sort of around here, create some more volume, yeah. Then we can play with the same sort of thing we just talked about on the last piece. Let me make this a little bigger. Then you could start to play with like when skin reflects off of skin, you could see like I can have a very white, I'll switch to this, right? So I have a very white bounce light right now, but when I put skin next to skin, see the color difference, right? As I go like this. Ooh, wow. Look at the difference in color to the shadows when I put something skin colored next to skin, right? It becomes more, saturated-y. Right, so then we can introduce some of these sort of effects into the shadows here and create some nice bounce lights off of his arm and stuff, and then we got to fix the neck shape here. Okay, so soften this, simplify, always push your highlights towards the middle. He's gonna have highlights like on his traps and stuff, so. And often highlights will end up falling into little crevices like this. Okay. Reduce here, don't overdo. Like it's too perfect, like it's too like, right? It looks like abs on his forehead, right? So we want to tone that down a little bit. Round it out some. Round this out a little. Okay. I hope that was helpful. I hope that all that stuff makes sense. And probably the best thing you can do is just have reference photo of Rutger Hauer, like, you know, so you can see all these like small details and how these shapes and stuff work, you know? Especially when it comes to painting the face, right? You might have some darker shadow like under the eyelid or something. I don't know how deep his eyelids are, but or how defined his cheekbones are, you know? Depends on the but I think that hopefully makes sense, right? So you should see now we have like a much more clear shapes and things on the face and yeah, on the neck. Eric, what is the best miniature made by GW in your opinion? I don't know. The best miniature? That's tough. I really don't know right off the top of my head. There's a lot of cool ones. It just depends on what you're into. A lot of the Nurgle ones are super good. Actually, some of the Necromunda ones are crazy good. And nobody really looked. They're kind of not looked at very much. But, all right. I'm going to be right back, and we will continue on. So, give me a few minutes, and we will continue. Hi, I'm back. Guess what, UK friends? We're already planning. I'll be back. The workshop is live for London. If it'll paste. Yeah, there you go. May 23rd and 24th, the weekend after MPO, I will be back in London. So if you want to take a workshop with me in London, there you go. I get home and I'm already planning next year's trips. So there you go. I can't get away from you. Eric, did it ever plan on going? Yes, I'll be in Monte next year. Of course. I go every year. Of course I'll be in Monte next year. Planning the trip around Monte too. I don't know exactly where. Probably in España. Voy a ir a la España. Would be great to have you do a workshop at or around SMC. Maybe. Pop secret. My bus practice continues. I spent the whole time during this one saying the mantra, define the shapes, paint the larger volumes first, then worry about the details. Good. Looking for general feedback. I will continue to have no idea how to do hair. Despite staring at reference material, I struggle where to put the shine and have the black hair not appear gray. Ooh, we could talk about this. Well, we already talked about the problem, and I think I explained this on the first bust we talked about, but you have too much gray. So the shines, actually the shine placement is pretty good. It just needs to be smaller, like smaller, more intense. But I think the figure in general is looking okay. So, man, she's got a 5 head, huh? Nope. Hi, Ham. That's what I'm gonna go with. All right. Let's look at the face. The face is not bad. I have no idea where this bust is from. You have some pretty good general shapes here. I think the one thing I'm kind of seeing that's a little obvious to me is these are probably too sharp. So this is not a line, okay, guys? Like the fold here isn't a line. It's a little shape, right? So it rounds like this, and then this is more flat, okay? So that shape's more flat. This one rounds. So we need to round this over. Then they connect. All right, so it shrinks towards the top, right? So it's a shape like, let me just draw it real quick. So it's a shape like this, okay? With the top part being more rounded. Okay. Other than that, I think this is always tough because you have kind of you sort of can see it. So if you put a light sort of here and a light kind of here, right? So you have a light like in the center of her nose, and then you have another light on the bridge, right? Right here. Watch when I do this. So I'm gonna, right? So where's the highlight for me right now? It's all the way up the nose. But if my nose, like, my nose is pretty straight, right? It doesn't curve in like this. Okay? So the bone here, right, makes my bridge of my nose more flat, right? And then it dips at the top. Okay, if it was more of a shape like if we drew her in profile, let me pick a color you can actually see, right? If we drew her more in profile, where her nose would be more of this sort of shape, where she doesn't have the bone sticking out like that, right? We look for areas, okay, so if we put a highlight here, we look for this angle, right? So it's this tangent, and then we have another tangent sort of here, and then where's another tangent? Kind of here, right? But yours is like way up on top of the forehead, okay? So we can move this down slightly to create a bit more light on this part of the nose and not make her that part so large. Yeah, I'm already like proportionally this is way too big, but we can only alter the sculpt so much to try and soften these things out. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I would actually probably move this light down even further. Like if I was trying to improve this sculpt a little and not make her quite so foreheady. I'm going to move this light probably down a little bit here. And then try and reduce it somewhat towards the top. So that we don't have this like massive area at the top here. And then we can play with the hair, and you could try and pull some of the, like, freehand some hair a little lower onto the forehead like this. Maybe fix this shape slightly. Probably her eyebrows need to come in a little bit more too. Yeah. Have I ever conducted a workshop in Asia? No. I've only done Europe and, what's it called? US and Europe. All right. And we talked about hair already. So I think you could also maybe to fix proportions on the face here, you could maybe like lift her cheekbones a little higher. So yours are like coming down like way down here, right? They're like quite low. So it's like your shape is like this right now, which makes her jaw look very small. EU trip was good this year. The second one this year. So by lifting them a little bit higher, it gives us a little more space to play in these areas here. So we can adjust some of the shape a little. So we're going to pull the shadows up slightly higher, and then we'll take a mid-tone. We can adjust the shape a little like that. No, there's no way this is a real person. But essentially, that's what makeup does anyways. Like when women go really heavy on makeup, they're basically trying to like alter their face shape. Anyways, yeah. So, all that's to say we can try and like, you can see the difference in the shape of the face here. I don't know if one's more correct, but you can feel like, you definitely should be able to feel like that the forehead looks like, appears a little smaller now. Cool. 360 Atlas and Vigor Mortis IT. Thanks for the Prime. All right, who are we at? Pop. That was Pop Secret. So. 6'2" koala. All right. All right. Thanks for continuing feedback over the past weeks. Moved on to Han. Looking for general feedback as I'm a bit lost on him at the moment. It's Han Solo, guys. I mean, looks pretty good to me. Oh, wrong one. So I think it's quite nice. I think, I don't have a ton to say, to be honest. Like, from a gaming figure standpoint, I think it's quite good. I think if I had, like, one thing to kind of point out, I think you've maybe, like, overdone the contrast on the leg a little. So I think we could try and darken that back down a little bit. Just don't, like, yeah, you don't want to overdo these highlights too much. It's like, the pants are brown, not white, you know? Just have a bit of an over tendency to, or you have a tendency to over highlight a little bit. The other thing would be on the face. I don't know if you're trying to do like the white dot in the eye, but the eyes are definitely like yeah, the shape is wrong for the eyes, so I want to try and round those over some. A little too much like gray black around the eyes. I actually don't really like the don't really like using black on around the bottom of the eyes on small scale figure, well, on any figures, to be honest. Like, save the black for the part above. It's just gonna look more natural. Like if you look at me, you don't really see black under the eye. You see it sort of over from the shadow of the upper eyelid, right? Especially when it's in light, right? There's no black line here. There is over the eye because of, you know, the shadow of the eyelid. H-Jam, thanks for the prime. But you don't really have a black line under the eye, okay? So careful doing too much black under. Then you can use like a darker tone like this, similar to this sort of color here, yeah, to create like this little triangular shape underneath. You don't need a lot. So we kind of create that lower eyelid. That'll make the face look a little more natural. Then you want to try and create a little shadow around the nostril. So just careful how much black you're using. Like this black is also, there's like black in here that's a little too much. And then try and connect these. Like we were talking about this shape before. This isn't, as these go across, right, they're little triangles, right? They don't connect to the side of the mouth. They start to fade away, right? Yeah, so it fades away a little. So don't overdo the that shape on the side, okay? The nasal labial fold. Other than that, looking pretty sweet. Probably the hair is also just like the same problem with the what's it called? Probably want to tone down the hair a little bit. Okay, like, so take a darker color. You have a tendency to over highlight darker elements too much. So we want to tone this down a little bit. You can use like a more transparent color or some kind of ink or something, you know, that's not too satin, and try and create something that's a little darker. Otherwise, all your highlights end up looking blown out and kind of the same. Okay. Pretty good. It's Han Solo, you guys. Mr. Harrison Ford. This part right here? No, I don't remember. You're talking about this like trapezoid shape right here? This is the lower part of the brow before the bridge. So the bridge of the nose is this. So it's like under the brow before the bridge of the nose. baby stapler. Oh boy. So, I've painted this guy. I did the box art for this model, actually. You say need help on the skin. Okay, so this model is the perfect model to understand. Let me see if I can pull up mine. Hold on, give me a second. I'll send it to myself. How long ago did I paint this thing? I don't remember. There he is. So here's mine. I don't remember who sculpted this one. So this model is the perfect example of simplifying shapes, because the skin is crazy detailed in terms of the sculpting. Like, there are so many wrinkles and like little micro volumes in the skin on this guy that really is like really complicated. Okay, so doing any sort of like wash technique or whatever like doesn't work great on this model. You have to like really break it down into more simple forms first and reduce quite a bit of the like the excessive shapes to this model. So if we look at a guy like this, like his forehead, like we have to, I don't even want to do an ad. I want to do like just like a normal layer in order to like reduce some of the overall shape. Like, so we need to think about like his forehead as like a bit of a dome, right? The eyebrows, the nose, the cheek, like we simplify these shapes and reduce the overall contrast first, and then we make more subtle changes through like highlights and stuff. So we can begin by creating just some more general form, and I'm going to reduce the detail contrast, so you can see just between like this and this, like I've reduced some of the detail contrast, which gives a more overall shape to his head. Okay, then we can play with some of the like darker colors, some maybe shift the coloration a little bit, so we play around with some tonal variation, right? We can start to like round this overall eyebrow shape. We round this shape, round the bottom of the nose, the cheekbones. Okay. Around the mouth, under the mouth. All right. So you can see, like, even though we're reducing the overall detail, we create a more readable form to his skin. Then you can start adding like highlights, okay? And highlights is where you start to pick out some of these like micro volumes. All right, so the nose. Right, we want to get some shape here. Then you can start picking out more like individual wrinkly shapes, right? So it's like more dots to begin to like pick out that there's, you know, these tiny little shapes here. But we focus them towards the middle, and then we reduce as we move outwards because we want to keep the overall shape correct, right? But we don't want, even like on the mouth, right? And then on the forehead, like we don't want to, right? So we have more midtones in here. Now we can start to pick out some of the like these individual folds and stuff and not overdo it to the point where the like shadows in between are so dark. We let midtones, these like halftone lights, become the shadows as we add more highlights. Okay? So you can see it starts to give some more shape and detail by pushing the highlights and keeping the like more simplified overall shape of the head. It's a very complex model, not easy to paint. Yeah. Your bones and stuff need more they need way more contrast, and then the hair needs some sort of variation with the fur. So you can see, I guess on mine, right, I chose to do the hair and the fur like different colors. Hard model to paint. It's not an easy one. Okay? Especially the neck is crazy. All right. Russell. Hi, Eric. Looking for some feedback on the lighting on the face. First time working in a larger scale with darker skin tones. What the heck is this model? Where do you guys find this stuff? What? Like, what's up with Native American Joe Pesci here? Native American Lady Joe Pesci. Could be South Pacific, I guess. Okay. I'm so thrown off. By the figure. I don't even know. Okay. So, you have some of the right coloration, okay? You need more warmth in some of the shadows, all right? So, if you're doing this sort of dark skin tone, this brown is too dull, okay? It's too orange, it's too dull. All right? So we need these like more red oxide-y kind of dark colors in the shadow areas. All right? Also, the paint is very sketchy. And the highlights are super chalky. Okay, let's simplify. We need to create this overall shape first. All right, so get the shadow areas. Get the lights. All right. Some smooth application of paint here, please. If we're going from for this like more top right light, like we want to, the shadow, like how many times are we going to talk about this shape? It's that the shadow is shadowed on the bottom side of the cheek, on the cheek part, not on the upper lip part. Okay, then now that we've got some like form, you could start adding highlights, and then depending on what kind of highlights, one, you're adding too much white, that's what's causing it to look super chalky and gray. Like look how gray, this is literally gray. Okay, I don't know if that's like the shininess of the paint or what's going on here, but it's like, I gotta assume that's the shininess of the paint. But even then before, like, this is so white, like it's turning gray. Okay, so we need some color. And depending on what's creating the light, you want to add either it's going to shift more yellow or it's going to shift more blue if it's the sky. So we have to go through a bit of the spectrum here in order to get some of these like orange tones. So we start with more reddish tones and then work our way up to oranges. Then we can start to add more these yellowish tones, and then we can add like highlights. Okay. Push the light even more, but we make it very small and intense on parts that are more shiny. This is the Sculpt. Let me see this thing. Yo, what happened? She's a dwarf. Huh? We. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. This is not this. Okay. Man, the face of the sculpt in the painting is so different. So there's definitely some things that I'm seeing in the sculpted version versus your painted version that are like really causing the like facial structure to look way different. One is like the expression of the mouth here has a much more like curved lip here. This curve is like much more outwards like this in the sculpt. This is quite tucked, but and then her face is a little more angular than you made it, so you're losing like some shape here of the cheekbones and jawline. I'm trying to like recover some of this stuff. There's also quite a bit of detail like that it was lost in the forehead. How do I put this? I don't normally recommend like ever starting over, but in this case I might suggest yeah, like beginning again and trying to find some more of the expression, like because the sculpt is quite expressive, particularly around the mouth, like, and you've lost a lot of the shape that's in the mouth here, right? So I might consider like beginning this sketch again. The eyes are like way too white also. Like the black lining around them is way too white. Or too dark. The black line is too dark and the eyes are too pure white. So like they're like way up here and they should be a much more like natural sort of gray. Something like this. Yeah. I really try and not give the recommendation to start over. But in this case, like, I think there's so much of the like overall shape of the model that's lost that like trying to like use the reference, like the sculpt as reference, take some reference photography, because the like the overall shape of the head is quite simple, but there's a lot of like micro expression to it. So getting that shape right is going to be really important. Oh, anyways. Yeah. Okay. Rescue can. Will added some new photos in a reply to this post. All right. Let's take a look. Photo is blown out or something. I don't know what's going on. Maybe not. Is it blown out? Am I crazy? It feels blown out. Maybe that's a little more natural. So, not bad in terms of shape here. Like, I think the lighting isn't awful, but I think we could separate it a little more. One, the eyes are crazy. She's got some crazy eyes. Hey, Ethan, thanks for the tier 1, appreciate it. So we need to give some shadow to the eyes here. Eyes are probably like too beady, right? So we like readjust the shape a bit, make her eyes a little softer. This isn't bad, but we need some like darker, a little bit darker redder value around the lower part to give some shape like this. Okay, so that, and then probably her eyebrows are like too blonde. Or we need to give some shadow. Like, I have blonde eyebrows, right? Like, hold on, wait. Yeah, so my eyebrows are like not super visible, but you can see the shadow line of them, right? Because they're quite blonde. So they fade away. Like if I come way back, like it's harder to see my eyebrows. But you can see the shadow line of them pretty clearly. Okay? Because the hairs still make shadows. Alright. So in terms of creating some shape here, like I think you did okay on this one. We could probably, it's not really like under the eyebrow though. We can think about the eyebrow as like a volume. So you want to create like a little thinner line there. And then this light is probably too dark. So we can bring it up a little. Let's push some of the shadow here. This eye would probably be a bit darker also. You probably have more of a shadow here, right? As you turn your face away from the light, you're going to get a bit of a shadow on that lower eyelid. Simplify the shadow shape. Okay. Like, you want to get the shape of the shadow right, and then you start to introduce nuance into it. Okay. So we could see by creating this more defined shape, right? Look at the difference in shape now and expression because of the eyes. The eyes are very important. All right. Clark, hello. Thanks for the 3 months. Okay. Then you have some more like micro detail-y stuff. All right. Like getting some shadow under the nostril here. Don't overdo the Cupid's bow. Then we can play with some midtones kind of here. Give some shape to the eye or to the fold. And then micro expression stuff like there's these tiny volumes in the corner of the mouth. Don't want to overdo it, so sometimes I like to make it a little larger and then shrink it. Okay, it just depends on where it is. But you have little bits of skin and stuff around the corner of the mouth that creates these like small shapes. Okay. The corner of the mouth tucks in. The shadow would also affect the eyebrow. Then you can play with including like pushing highlights where you need. So based on the lighting direction, you want to consider like what the main view is, and then you start to get like highlights on certain shapes of the, like if it's on the nose here, you would get one on the like side of the nose, right? So if I turn this way, like there's almost no shadow here, right? So here the highlight is like this, but as I turn my face, the highlight starts to come around, and then you see another one like right here, you know? So I have one here, I have one here, and then I have one here. Okay? So the same thing happens here. If I exaggerate it a little, right? You have one on the head here. You would get one kind of here. You get one in this here, and these kind of connect together. Then you have the one on the nose. Then you get one on the cheek. You get this one. You might get some small ones down here, like that. right? Now you can see, like, even though I didn't really add much to this little shape right here, you can actually connect these like this. Like we create that tiny little, we create this tiny little shape right there through highlight. Okay. Steve. Hi, Eric. Looking for general feedback on anything you could help me improve the most. Updated pics below. This one. Hey, this is pretty good. Would somebody take a class or something, huh? So this one takes some me staring at for a bit because I'm so familiar with this figure, right? Like, I need to think a little about like what I would improve. I think one is probably the texture on your fabric is maybe a little heavy. I'd probably do some glazes to like try and reduce it a touch. Like make it a little softer. You can glaze with stippling too, so like you stipple with a more thin paint and you can create smaller dots that are like semi-transparent, and that'll create like a softer texture here. Pull the light up a little bit, right? So we can get something a little smoother. Right now it feels a little too heavy-handed, okay? So we want to reduce that just a little bit. The next thing is, I think the face is pretty on point. I think the face is really like quite good. I mean, that was a big focus in the class, was painting the face. So I think you did quite the nice job there. You could maybe start to introduce like a little more micro volumes like up in the eye area. There's some like space here to kind of play. Another one would be like give a little highlight here. I would probably introduce some kind of subtle bounce light here. Maybe reduce this a tiny bit. This is a little heavy. And then the hands, okay? The hands is definitely the hardest part of this model. It is for sure like the most difficult thing about this guy, in my opinion. We want to tone some of this down, okay? So we need to unify and get like the overall form. So you want to be a little more subtle on the hands, okay? So I want to tie things together a little bit and not overdo some of the light and shadow here. Be a little more nuanced on the hand. All right. So we can see that by actually reducing a little, it makes the hand feel a little more natural, like, right? Then where you do have shadow, you need to be that shadow needs to be very clear. So like if this part of his hand is in shadow, you get some of the shadow of the knuckle there, here, but also, right, like on this little bone in the wrist, and then you might get some that comes up over like that. So this basically, this whole section here would be quite dark. The hardest part is when it comes to veins, okay? And I don't have the like strongest veins in my hand. They're hard, like they don't pop out like crazy. I can get them to pop out if I like stand upright and like, you know, pinch like this and hold my hand down. But basically, like, look at my kind of knuckles, right? Like if I go like this, hold on, maybe if I stand up, it'll work. I can get them to do it. I'm not dehydrated enough right now. So, let's see. So you can see that there's like some veins in my hand, right? And if I go like this, they're basically gone, right? But as I turn just perfectly, like the shadows will begin to show up on certain parts of the veins and they start to pop out more, right? So what we're aiming for is finding those angles where the veins are like just, or certain parts of the veins are just in the right spot, that like they start to actually have a shadow, right? Where here they don't have a shadow, but here they do. And it's like this just couple degree difference that can create like shadows or not. Okay? So that's to say, on the hands here, where would parts of this be in the exact right position that certain parts of the veins now start to have some shadow form to them, okay? And it's basically like sort of this angle where we begin to see like the veins begin to actually round over away from the light enough that they cast, or that they have a volumetric shadow to them. Okay, it's a very subtle thing. So like this hand has it, but it doesn't. It's facing the light too much here, but here they're at like the perfect position where it starts to show up. This one they don't show up at all, right? Who's it? Mo Hand Art. Hello. Thanks for the raid. Also, Mo's, if I missed the prime, thank you. Okay. The same thing is true over on this hand. Like, we have to get the shadows in. That means this stuff here is starting to round away from the light. And then this, right? We create this shadow shape that matches up the arm like that, right? And then some of the veins here will actually have volumetric shadow where other parts will not. Right? So it's like just in the right position where they start to pop out a little more. Okay? Then you don't want to overdo them, like why is this so white compared to that? Okay, we want to tie these back together a little bit. Instead, we want to play with color instead, or like saturation instead of value so much on the veins. The veins are not like lighter in value. They're just different in terms of like saturation because the color is different. Okay? Cool. Then you can start to like get some highlights that, you know, pop out in between certain areas. This one needs to be simplified too, and the highlight is kind of here. Right, so we have to push the contrast a little bit in certain areas and reduce it a little bit in others. It's a subtle game we're playing. See the difference? I hope so. Not an easy thing. All right. Margaret. Hi, Eric. I'm painting this mermaid and would like to ask you about general feedback on her hair. Is not painted in yet, but I finished her tail, shield, and skin mostly. She will receive later a bigger base in the background. Thank you for your thoughts. It looks quite good. Yeah, I like this. This is nice. His skin looks good. Volumes are pretty nice. Face looks pretty good. I just want to see more. I want to see more of what the base is going to be. I think what would make this one interesting is knowing, like, okay, let's talk a little bit about basing, right? Since I don't have a ton to talk about on the painting side. Like, I think it's generally quite nice. So let's talk about basing for a second, and basing as an afterthought. So my question to you, or chat in general, is, are you considering what kind of basing you're going to do? Like, are you considering the type of environment that you're going to put your figure in before you start painting it? Because what often happens is when you paint the figure first without consideration for the base, when you go to then do the base, they often feel disconnected. Because I'm not saying you have to paint the base and the figure at the same time, but you need to at least be considering like what the basing and what the ambience is going to be when you paint the figure. Right? So right now, other than the fact she's sitting on a rock, I have no idea what the like environment or any. It's everything is so neutral at the moment. Uh, you think I skipped a few? Did I? Oh, I did because I went down. Well, all right. Well, I'll do this one real quick and then because I'm not going to do any really paint over. Thank you, by the way. Yeah. So you have to consider the type of base that you put, like, or that what the scene is that's going to be like the figures painted in. Because right now it's just super neutral. It's just white. Everything is, there's nothing on the figures telling me what kind of scene this is going to be, right? What time of day it is, what the light, like I can see the lighting direction, but is it going to be an aquatic scene? Is she underwater? Is she above water? Like, I don't think she's supposed to be underwater, but maybe she is. Her hair is a little flowy. So, could be that she's underwater. I don't know for sure. Is there going to be like crashing waves? Is there going to be, just like all this stuff puts into consideration like what kind of colors and things you're going to use on the figure. Otherwise, you end up painting the figure with like, not saying that the skin is bad, but it's pretty plain, right? It's like, okay, here's a dark brown, here's a brown. Like everything is very linear, right? So it's like, here's a brown for the shadows, right? This is brownish orange, and then we go to a more light orange, and then we go to a lighter version of that, and then we go to a lighter version of that, and everything is just like super linear, right? Just right? We're just adding white, okay? Let's look at how much this moves on the color wheel when we look at it. Okay, so we're right here, yeah? How much is this going to move around? Okay, it shifted slightly. Wow, it moved from here to there. Right? But you've got all of these colors that could all play into skin tones, right? So you've got this whole band. In fact, I even play sometimes in these sorts of colors. Right? You have all of this sort of tones that you can play in. Sometimes I use tones like this in skin tones, So you get these like more desaturated greenish tones. But your everything's like in right here, right? So it's super linear. There's like no variation. There's no like ambience or mood to it, right? It's what I'm getting at is it's painted well. It's just kind of boring. So what if we did something like this? Let's take the figure. How do I duplicate a layer? Yeah. What if we played with the color balance? Right? So instead, what if our shadows were like a little more bluish, right? And what if the highlights are a little more, yellow or something? Okay? Already, I think you find that, like, from this to this, the second one is more interesting to look at, right? Like now, this is where our shadows are like down here, right? Into these reds, almost getting into the magentas. And then our lights are like way up here in the yellows, right? So now we're playing through this like spectrum of colors and we're really shifting through tones and we're creating like ambience and mood, okay? So you have to think about like your scene more, all right? Okay. Let's go back to where we were supposed to be. Because I skipped some people. Eric with an H. The Flower Knight. All right. Eric, long-time listener, first-time caller. I submitted this to the APG expansions. I don't know what that is. I assumed some... Adam Poots Games expansions painting contest in the diorama category and didn't place. It was a bit disappointing, but I was hoping for some feedback so I can do better next time around. I don't know how the contest worked, if it was first, second, and third or what. I don't like to comment so much on how like contests are judged. Hi, Lucas. Because I wasn't a judge, so I don't know what they were thinking. And I don't know what the other entrants looked like, so... But... One, where's the main picture? Is this the pictures you submitted? Are you here? Eric with an H? Are you in? Are you in the chat right now? Because part of a diorama and submitting a diorama, by the way, if you're entering an online painting competition, your photographs are very important. And none of these tell me which is the main, like, where am I supposed to look at this? Is this the main view? This isn't a very good main view because one, I'm getting her, and then the other, I'm getting him, like, hidden away. So, it's not this. Is it this? But then I can't see her. So, what's the main view, right? And this one's too cropped in. I don't see everything. Okay. So, I need to know the main view. The second thing... All right, let's take this image because this is the only one where I can see everything. Have I judged an online comp before? Yes, I've judged MPO online. So, Jolene, I'll tell you this. Here's a quick story. Matt Kennedy, who is a heavy metal painter, entered MPO online in Masters. I knew the figure. I had seen it in hand. But the photographs, it's incredibly well done. It is heavy metal to plus, right? Super well done. But the photos he submitted were garbage. I couldn't see anything. So the problem is I know the model. I know it's well painted, but I have to judge it based on the photos because that would be unfair to other people if I gave him a good medal based on my knowledge that it's well painted, even though the photos are terrible. So, yeah, you have to judge based on the photographs, and part of an online painting competition is your ability to take good photographs that show off your figure. Like, sorry to say that just becomes part of it, right? Okay, back to Eric. Now, do I want to look at this one or do I want to look at this one? Maybe this one's better. I don't know. So, one, I think if you're going for a very moody scene, yes, the one thing I am getting at is your photos are bad. no, none of your photos show the whole figure or the whole piece. This one does, but I don't think this is the one that you want to be the main view because she's out of focus in the back. So, yeah, what's the main, like, where do you want people to look at this from? Is it this? Is it this? So I can't imagine it's this, right? So, yeah, when you do an online, none of these are like what I assume is the best view for this piece. Okay, now besides that, what is happening here? We have this big moody light source going on. And you didn't paint this at all. Where's the light affecting this up here? Okay, you got this like you're trying to do this like super heavy OSL moody thing. This figure would have been better. When you do this sort of like OSL super heavy sort of look, typically this is going to work better on a black background. Now, that's to say that some of these areas, this is going to be like impossible to paint over this, but I'll try and express it in a way. Like this stuff up here needs to be way darker. Okay. So we're trying to make a moody scene. We need to darken this down. And then you need to affect this with this sort of yellow light, right? So that yellow light. Do pieces in online comps get judged harsher if there aren't any pics of the back included? I mean, you should probably include a picture of the back, but we judge what we're shown. Okay, so you need to affect some parts of the scene with light. Now, light is most intense around the thing making the light. So really, the lantern should be the absolute brightest part. It should be like super bright, right? Just bought KDM. Not sure if I have buyer's regret or not. You should not, because the game is incredible. It's like one of my favorite. It's my favorite board game I've ever played, and definitely up there in terms of tabletop games. And it has super awesome miniatures. So, light has fall off. You need to have the most intense amount of light on the absolute closest things to the light source, including the light source itself, should be the most bright. And then as you move away, that light source becomes dimmer and more evenly lighting things that from further away, right? So it's like this would be, if we said the thing literally, if this is 100% light, and then the thing right here is 90%, then it's like 50%, then it's like 10%, and then it's like 8%, 7%, right? So it doesn't scale linearly. It scales it's an inverse square. Okay? So things that are twice as far away have 1/4 the amount of light. All right, so mood is a big thing. Photographs is a big thing. We can talk about the Flower Night quickly. You don't lie to me. I know you saved. See? Okay. I am not. So there's one of the issues I have with the Flower Knight here is this stuff is fabric. This is fabric, right? And then this is metal, and this is metal. I don't see the difference. Is one of the issues. This is also metal, and the sword doesn't have nearly enough shine. Okay, so let's give some shine to some things that need shine. Like you gave shine to this part of the metal, but then the sword has like nothing. Right? So the sword needs some shininess. Yeah, some of these parts need to be shinier. Okay, and then like just elements are not sharp enough, right? So there's a lot of little details and stuff in here that are getting lost. Then your clothing parts, like I guess you're trying to do like a kind of satiny material, but like we need to define some of these elements and probably tone it down a little bit so it doesn't feel just like the gold, right? Because beyond that, it's like the identical color to the gold, right? We have like literally the same exact tones. So maybe a thought would have been to do something like more like a red instead or whatever, so that we're creating, even if you wanted to do yellow, maybe this green would have been good, and then using silvers or whatever or golds here. So we create, like distinction between, I get it. Like I understand that that's what you were going for, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but it makes readability really difficult on especially a figure that's so detailed already. Like sometimes we have to simplify in order to create or like change it up so that the readability of the model is more clear, right? Like between this and this, like you can see that those parts are now even changing the color and still doing it satiny. Like by doing it gold, it's just too similar to the gold accents on the armor. Okay. I also think probably in terms of the diorama itself, like compositionally, yeah, like they're probably too far apart. Like I recommend this with dioramas. When you're doing a scene like this, add and then take away. It's like, so strip it down to its bare essentials, right? Strip it down to whatever is needed to tell the story that you're trying to tell. Then you can add more detail within that small story, right? So right now it's like, it's just huge and unnecessarily large, right? We don't, like, even from a compositional standpoint like this, like They're just so far. There's just way too much empty space between each other. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. All right. Bunkalator, I think this is going to be the last one we do for this week. And then I will try and get through. Oh, there's still a lot more. All right. Well, those will have to wait. Bunkalator. Hi, Eric. I have some specific questions for this guy, but general feedback is also welcome. The base and color scheme were inspired by Frazetta's Egyptian Queen, although I'm not too happy with this how the stone effect turned out. Okay. Do you have any advice on how to approach that? And do you think the sea green turban paint works here? I can't help but feel something is off. I think it works. Let's look. In terms of the base, probably what the problem you're feeling with the base is that you just don't have enough. I messaged you about food, by the way. Well, I've been doing this, so I didn't read it. Unless you messaged me in chat. I haven't looked at my phone. Which one are you going, Spirit? Since you're in, how far down are you? Dude, you're like, you're so far down. Didn't I look at this one already, or is this? No, this is someone else painted the same model. All right. Yeah, I think the only thing I'm seeing. Yes, I understand the thing with the rocks. I guess you're going for like a light passing through here. I would simplify. I get what you're going for, like based on because I know the painting. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know the painting, so I know what you're trying to go for in the rocks. You probably need some more like I don't know. Probably some more like larger veins in there to make it look more marbly, I guess. In terms of the painting of the figure itself, I think it's quite nice. I like some of the non-metallics and stuff. I think the thing that's bothering you about the turban is the thing that's often the issue that arises is if we do this, right? Again, guys, the importance of values here. We have to look at values. What's going on? Everything other than the metallics and the leathers are nice, right? But the white shirt and the green turban and the skin, they're all kind of the same. Yeah? So we can create something, and we can shift it a little blue, I guess. Right? So let's tone it down a little, you know? Yeah, now it starts to like frame the face, right? Okay, and then it's also clearly different between the white shirt and the teal, right? This is this issue with like you guys want to over highlight everything. You want to like push the contrast all the time to like the maximum level. Like, whoa, needs maximum contrast. Like, no, the metal needs maximum contrast. This fabric, no, doesn't. It doesn't really, right? So we can tone this like way back. One, because the pants like aren't that interesting. We can tone this back. We can even maybe instead of multiply, just like is there a better mode for this? Maybe not. I don't know the difference between some of these. Anyways, we tone this down, and then we can like reduce it a little bit, you know? Like if we want to bring some of that highlight back just around the face, we can do that to give it that shine that you want. So we can put in some highlights, right? But by overall reducing it, it helps frame the face more. Okay? So don't overdo it all the time. The same can be said for the boots here. It's like this. You've got space to go, right? We can darken this down more. We can play with some darker leathers. Okay, something like that. Then you give them the highlights. And the highlights are going to be, because it's like a darker, shinier material, they're going to be like a little more intense, you know? So we could come back with like this kind of warmer highlight type thing. Yeah. Nope, not bright enough. Right, and we create these shines on the boots that are smaller. Make the leather kind of shiny looking, right? But the general, we lower the overall value, and then we play with the shines on top. All right. Probably this is maybe a little too yellowish also. Like you can use green. Okay. So, right? See, now you look at it from before and you're probably like, whoa, that turquoise is like way too bright, right? Compared to that. How do you know when to put a lot of contrast into something or not? Metallics and the interesting points of the model. Shiny things have higher contrast. Top of my hair right now. Sticking up. Wearing a hood. Right? This is shiny, so it had like the leather is quite shiny, so it has higher contrast compared to my skin literally right next to it, right? has lower contrast because it's not as shiny as this. Okay? So it's more about how the material, you're trying to render and understand materials. Okay? So metallics have ultra high shine, right? Very contrasty. Yeah. Super shiny, right? Leather is less shiny. My shirt is less shiny. Like, look at the difference between this leather box and my shirt, right? Like, the highlight on this is the value is higher than it is on my shirt, and the shadows are darker, right? The pure blacks look darker because this is a less glossy material. So first we're thinking about materials, and then we're also thinking about focus. There's so much stuff that goes into value and understanding, like when you need to push value, when you need to push contrast, when you need to reduce it. We're trying to, like, you have visual hierarchy, you have materials, so there's a lot of things that are involved. But in this case, we're trying to use contrast in order to create visual focus and hierarchy to the parts of the model that we want to look at. Okay? Cool? What was the next one? Murph? Okay. That's how many hours. That's how many. We're out. We're out of time for today, kids. I hope that was interesting. I'll catch you all next week. And I hope you have a great weekend. Eric, are you back home now for a while, that is? No, not exactly. I leave in January for a weekend, but that's it. All right, guys. See you later. Oh, let me end the recording.